shook his head. I cannot help you, Grace. I will not lend you the money to save your husband. You should have thought about this before. As Grace was about to leave, her heart shattered. Moses shouted, "Wait." She turned around, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. I will help you, he said, but on one condition. I'm ready to do anything. Please, tell me, Grace replied, her voice trembling. Moses leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. You must spend a night with me, and I will give you the money to save your husband for free. Before you watch the entire video, I want you to consider and answer these questions. Would you sleep with a man to save your dying husband? And would you forgive your wife if you found out she cheated on you to get the money needed to save your life? Reflect on these questions as we delve into this emotional and powerful story of love, sacrifice, and forgiveness.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, share, and comment. And as a matter of fact, I love you all.
When Grace completed university, she returned home and started attending her old church. In the same church was Moses, a very successful and respected man. Grace was incredibly beautiful, with a smile that could light up any room. Many men in the church admired her and wanted to marry her, including Moses. Moses was a kind man, known for his wisdom and generosity. He had achieved much in life and was well loved by everyone in the community. Despite his success, he found himself drawn to Grace's beauty and gentle spirit. One Sunday, after service, Moses approached Grace with a warm smile. "Grace, may I have a moment of your time?" he asked gently. "Of course, Moses," she replied, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. They sat on a bench outside the church, the sun casting a golden glow around them. Moses began, "I have watched you grow into a wonderful young woman. You have a kind heart and a bright mind. I must admit, I am very fond of you." Grace blushed, her heart fluttering. "Thank you, Moses. That means a lot coming from you." Moses took a deep breath. "I know many men have shown interest in you, and I am one of them. But I want you to know that my feelings for you are genuine. I care for you deeply and would be honored if you considered me as a potential husband." Grace looked down, thinking carefully before she spoke. "Moses, I appreciate your kind words and your interest in me. But I believe that love is not about wealth or status. For me, love must be true and pure." Moses nodded, respecting her thoughts. "I understand, Grace. I want you to know that my love for you is sincere. I will give you time to think about it, and whatever decision you make, I will always respect you." Days turned into weeks, and Grace spent a lot of time praying and thinking about her future. She admired Moses' honesty and kindness, but she was still unsure. One evening, as the sun was setting, Grace found herself walking in the church garden. She was deep in thought when Elder Moses joined her. "Grace," he said softly, "I don't want to pressure you, but I want you to know that I will wait for you, no matter how long it takes. Your happiness means the world to me." Grace turned to face him, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and sadness. "Moses," she began, her voice steady yet tender, "I admire your kindness and generosity more than words can express. You are a wonderful man, and any woman would be lucky to have you." Moses listened intently, sensing the gravity of her words. But Grace continued, her voice growing softer, "I must be honest with you. You have no place in my heart as a lover. I do not want to lead you on or give you false hope. It wouldn't be fair to either of us. My feelings for you are those of deep respect and friendship, but nothing more." Moses nodded, a gentle smile forming on his lips despite the pang of disappointment in his heart. "Thank you for your honesty, Grace. It takes great courage to speak so openly. I respect your feelings and your decision." Grace felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "I hope we can remain friends, Moses. Your guidance and wisdom mean so much to me." I value our friendship and would not want to lose that. Moses placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Of course, Grace. Our friendship is very important to me, too. I will always be here for you as a friend and a mentor. Your happiness is what matters most. In the same church was a very humble young man named Stephen, a singer with a sweet and charming voice. When he sang, his voice would bring tears to your eyes. Many people attended church on Sundays just to hear him sing. He was a man that every woman would love to marry. On Sunday, as Grace sat in her usual spot, she listened to Stephen's voice fill the church. His singing touched her heart deeply, and she found herself moved by the purity and emotion in his voice. She admired his humility and the way he seemed to pour his soul into every song. After the service, Grace saw Stephen standing by the church entrance, greeting the congregation. She felt a sudden urge to speak to him, to get to know the man behind the beautiful voice. She approached him with a warm smile. "Hello, Stephen," she said softly. "Your singing today was truly beautiful. It touched my heart." Stephen smiled shyly, his eyes reflecting his humility. "Thank you, Grace. That means a lot to me. I sing from my heart, hoping to bring a little bit of heaven to those who listen." Grace was struck by his sincerity. "You do more than that, Stephen. You inspire us all with your music." They talked for a while, sharing stories and laughter. One sunny afternoon, Moses decided to visit Grace at her home. He arrived with a warm smile, carrying a basket filled with gifts and an envelope containing a significant sum of money. He was greeted by Grace, who invited him inside. "Hello, Moses," Grace said warmly. "It's so nice to see you. Please come in." "Thank you," Moses replied, stepping inside and handing her the basket. "I brought you some gifts and a little something extra in this envelope. It's just a small token of my appreciation for you." Grace looked at the basket and the envelope, her heart sinking. She knew Moses was a kind and generous man, but she couldn't help but feel uneasy about accepting such gifts. She took a deep breath and gently placed the items on the table. "Moses, I appreciate your kindness and generosity more than words can express," she began, her voice soft but firm. "However, I must be honest with you. I cannot accept this gift." Moses looked surprised. "But why, Grace? These gifts are just a way to show my gratitude and respect for you." Grace shook her head gently. "I understand that, but it doesn't feel right to me. I don't want there to be any misunderstandings or feelings of obligation. I value our friendship and respect too much to let material things come between us." Moses sighed, realizing the sincerity in her words. "I see, Grace. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I just wanted to help and show my appreciation." Grace smiled warmly. "And I appreciate that, truly. Your support and friendship mean the world to me. That's more than enough." Moses nodded, respecting her decision. "Very well, Grace, I understand. Thank you for your honesty." As Moses left, Grace felt a sense of relief. She was grateful for his understanding and hoped their friendship would remain strong. She knew she had made the right choice, keeping her integrity and the purity of her relationships intact. That evening, Grace met Stephen at the church. They sat together on a bench in the garden, the evening breeze gently rustling the leaves around them. Grace began, "Moses visited me today with some gifts and a large sum of money. He said it was just a gift, but I couldn't accept it. I didn't want any misunderstandings or to feel obligated." Stephen took her hand, his eyes filled with admiration. "Grace, you did the right thing. Your integrity and honesty are part of what makes you so special. I'm proud of you." Grace smiled, feeling the warmth of Stephen's words. "Thank you, Stephen. Your support means everything to me." A few days later, Moses, accompanied by a few church members, visited Grace's parents. They were warmly welcomed into the family home, where they sat in the living room exchanging pleasantries and sipping on cool drinks. After a bit of small talk, Moses cleared his throat and began to speak earnestly. "Mr. and Mrs. Andrew, I have come today to express my deep admiration and love for your daughter, Grace. She is a remarkable young woman, and I would be honored if you would consider allowing me to marry her." Grace's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Andrew, exchanged glances. They had always respected Moses for his wisdom and kindness. Mr. Andrew responded, "Moses, we hold you in high esteem, and we appreciate the honor you show our family. We are ready to welcome you into our family, provided our daughter agrees." They called Grace into the room. She entered, her eyes calm but resolute, and sat down next to her parents. Mr. Andrew spoke gently, "Grace, Moses has come to express his wish to marry you. We value his respect and kindness, but we want to know how you feel about this." Grace took a deep breath and looked directly at Moses, then at her parents. "Mom, Dad, Moses, I appreciate the love and respect you have shown me. However, I cannot accept this proposal. If I marry Moses, I won't be able to give him my heart because I have no romantic affection for him, even though I admire him greatly." Moses listened intently, nodding slowly as she spoke. He could see the sincerity in her eyes and the firmness of her decision. Mrs. Andrew reached out to hold Grace's hand, offering silent support. "I understand, Grace," Moses said softly, his voice tinged with sadness but full of respect. "Your honesty and integrity are commendable. I want you to be happy, and I respect your decision." Mr. Andrew nodded, looking at Moses. "We appreciate your understanding, Moses. Grace's happiness is our priority." As the visitors prepared to leave, Moses turned to Grace's parents. "Thank you for your time and hospitality. I respect Grace's decision and wish her nothing but happiness. Our friendship and respect remain unchanged." After they left, Grace's parents sat with her in the living room, their expressions thoughtful. "Grace," her mother began, "we want you to know that we support you in whatever choice you make. Your happiness is what matters most to us." Grace smiled, feeling relieved and supported. "Thank you, Mom and Dad. Your support means everything to me." Later that evening, Grace met Stephen at their usual spot in the church garden. She recounted the day's events, and Stephen listened intently, his expression filled with admiration and love. "Grace," Stephen said softly, taking her hands in his, "you showed such strength and honesty today. I am so proud of you. Your courage and integrity are truly inspiring." A few weeks later, Grace excitedly shared some news with Stephen as they sat under their favorite tree in the garden. "Stephen, I got a job as a secretary at a company," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Stephen's face lit up with a broad smile. "That's wonderful news, Grace. Congratulations. I knew you would find something great. I wish you all the best in this new journey." "Thank you, Stephen," Grace said, her heart warming at his genuine happiness for her. "I couldn't have done it without your support and encouragement." Stephen chuckled softly. "You've always had the talent and determination. I'm just glad I could be there for you." Despite their close friendship, Stephen had never formally proposed to Grace, though his feelings for her were clear in his actions and words. They spent many evenings together, sharing dreams, fears, and laughter. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. One evening, after a long day at work, Grace sat on a bench in the garden, thinking about how much her life had changed. Stephen joined her, noticing the contemplative look on her face. "Penny for your thoughts," he asked with a gentle smile. Grace turned to him, her eyes filled with emotion. "Stephen, I've been thinking a lot lately about us, about our future. We've shared so much, and you've always been there for me. I feel like there's something more between us." Stephen's heart raced. He had been waiting for the right moment to express his feelings, and now it seemed that Grace was opening the door. He took a deep breath and gently held her hands. "Grace," he began, his voice filled with emotion, "from the moment we became friends, you have been a light in my life. Your kindness, your strength, and your beautiful soul have touched me deeply. I have fallen in love with you, Grace. I've been waiting for the right moment to tell you, and I hope you feel the same way." Tears welled up in Grace's eyes as she listened to his heartfelt words. "Stephen, I love you too. You've always been my rock, my confidant. I can't imagine my life without you." Stephen smiled, his heart soaring with joy. "Grace, will you be with me not just as a friend, but as my partner in life? Will you marry me?" Grace's tears turned to tears of joy. "Yes, Stephen, I will marry you. I want to spend my life with you." In the church, when Moses heard about Grace and Stephen's relationship, he felt a mix of jealousy and disappointment. Unable to keep his feelings to himself, he decided to approach Grace after the Sunday service. He found her talking with some friends and waited until she was alone. "Grace," he began, his voice tinged with frustration, "can I have a word with you?" "Of course," Grace replied, sensing the tension in his voice. He took a deep breath and spoke bluntly. "So, it was because of Stephen that you turned me down? Are you sure Stephen, an ordinary school teacher, can take care of you? Think about this carefully." Grace looked at him calmly, her heart steady. "Moses, my decision wasn't about choosing one person over another based on their job or status. It's not about money or wealth, it's about how my heart feels. I followed my heart, not wealth." Moses' expression hardened. "You have made a wrong decision, Grace. I hope you don't regret it later." Grace felt a pang of sadness for him but stood her ground. "I understand your concern, Moses, but I believe true happiness comes from love, respect, and understanding. Stephen gives me that. I know you mean well, but this is my choice." Moses shook his head and walked away, leaving Grace feeling both relieved and a bit sorrowful for the confrontation. She knew she had made the right decision, but she wished it hadn't caused Moses so much pain. That evening, Grace met Stephen at their usual spot in the church garden. She recounted her conversation with Moses, her voice steady but emotional. Stephen listened carefully, his expression thoughtful. "I'm sorry you had to go through that, Grace. I know Moses cares for you in his way, but I'm glad you stood by your feelings." Grace smiled, feeling the warmth of Stephen's support. "I did what felt right, Stephen. Our love is based on more than just material things. It's about the connection we share and the respect we have for each other." Stephen took her hand, his eyes filled with love. "I promise to always cherish you and prove that your heart made the right choice. Together, we'll build a life filled with happiness and love." As Grace and Stephen prepared for their wedding, the atmosphere in the church was a mix of joy and underlying tension. Some men, especially Moses, felt a pang of jealousy, wishing they had been the ones to win Grace's heart. The women, on the other hand, envied Grace for being chosen by Stephen, whose gentle nature and beautiful singing voice had captured many hearts. Despite the mixed emotions, Grace and Stephen remained focused on their love and the journey ahead. They decided to have a modest traditional marriage ceremony, reflecting their humble and sincere approach to life. The traditional marriage took place at Grace's family house, adorned with colorful decorations and filled with the joyful sounds of laughter and music. Family and friends gathered to witness the union, dressed in vibrant traditional attire. The ceremony was rich in culture, with blessings from elders and the exchange of symbolic gifts. Stephen's family arrived with gifts, including drinks, clothes, and a bride price, in a show of respect and tradition. Grace looked radiant in her traditional dress, and Stephen beamed with pride in his matching attire. The two families came together, celebrating the union with songs, dances, and heartfelt prayers. The couple had a modest church wedding. The church was beautifully decorated with flowers and ribbons, creating a serene and holy atmosphere. For months after their wedding, one evening, Stephen returned home from work looking more tired and exhausted than usual. Grace noticed immediately, and her concern grew. "Stephen, you look so tired," she said gently, approaching him as he sank into a chair. "What's wrong? Is everything okay?" Stephen sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. "I've just had a headache all day and I've been feeling a bit dizzy. It's probably just fatigue." Grace knelt beside him, her eyes filled with worry. "You work so hard, Stephen. Maybe you need to rest more. Let me get you some water and something for the headache." She quickly fetched a glass of water and some pain relievers. As he took the medication, Grace sat beside him, holding his hand. "You should see a doctor if this doesn't get better. I'm really worried about you." Stephen gave her a tired smile. "Thank you, Grace. I'll be fine. I just need to rest." That night, Grace made sure Stephen had a light dinner and went to bed early. She stayed by his side, watching over him as he slept, her heart heavy with concern. The next morning, despite still feeling unwell, Stephen insisted on going to work. "Grace, I can't miss work today." "I'll be fine," he said, trying to reassure her as he got ready. Grace looked at him with concern. "Stephen, please be careful. Promise me you'll go to the hospital if you feel worse." Stephen nodded, giving her a kiss on the forehead before leaving. "I promise I'll be fine." However, as Stephen was driving the school bus later that day, his condition took a turn for the worse. The dizziness returned with a vengeance, making it difficult for him to focus on the road. His vision blurred, and he felt an overwhelming sense of fatigue. Realizing he couldn't continue, he pulled over and called his supervisor for help. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived and rushed Stephen to the hospital. His colleagues informed Grace, who immediately made her way to the hospital, her heart pounding with worry. When she arrived, she found Stephen in a hospital bed, looking pale but conscious. The doctors were running tests to determine the cause of his sudden deterioration. "Stephen," Grace said softly, tears brimming in her eyes as she held his hand. "You scared me so much. I'm glad you're okay." Stephen managed a weak smile. "I'm sorry, Grace. I should have listened to you. I'm glad you're here." The doctors explained that Stephen's anemia had worsened due to stress and overexertion. They administered a blood transfusion and adjusted his medication, emphasizing the importance of rest and a proper diet. After a few days of treatment and monitoring, Stephen was discharged from the hospital. Grace was there to bring him home, determined to ensure he took his recovery seriously this time. Despite their best efforts, Stephen's health condition continued to worsen over time. He experienced increasingly severe headaches, dizziness, slurred speech, and memory loss. As a driver for a school, his deteriorating health raised concerns among his employers. Although the school initially provided financial support for his medical treatment, they eventually found it unsustainable. Realizing the financial strain, the school sent Stephen a letter informing him that he had been replaced. They encouraged him to focus on his health and assured him that he could reapply for a job if he recovered. The dismissal was a significant blow to Stephen, both emotionally and financially. Without a steady income, Stephen struggled to afford his medical bills. His worsening condition meant he relied heavily on his partner, Grace. Despite her efforts, her salary was insufficient to cover the mounting medical expenses. This left them in a challenging situation, struggling to manage Stephen's deteriorating health with limited financial resources. Concerned about Stephen's health and their financial situation, Grace decided to visit the church pastor. She explained her husband's condition, detailing the struggles they had been facing since Stephen's health had declined. The pastor listened attentively, his face showing deep concern and empathy. "Grace, I am very sorry to hear about Stephen's condition. He has been a valuable member of our church community, and his singing has touched so many hearts. We have all been blessed by his presence." The pastor then stood up and walked to a small cabinet in the corner of his office. He opened it and took out an envelope with some money inside. Handing it to Grace, he said, "This is a small amount to help support Stephen during this difficult time. This money isn't from the church coffers but rather from my own savings. Please use it to help manage things for now." Grace's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. "Thank you so much, Pastor. This means a lot to us. I was worried about how we would manage, and this will help us get through this period." The money from the pastor, though given with the best intentions, wasn't enough to sustain them for more than 3 days. Grace was grateful but knew it wouldn't solve their long-term financial problems. As time passed, Stephen's condition worsened, prompting another visit to the doctor. This time, the diagnosis was much more serious. Stephen had a brain tumor that required immediate surgery. The news was devastating, and the cost of the surgery was beyond their means. Grace had already exhausted all her savings and was in debt. Stephen's family did their best to provide financial support, but they had limited resources. With Stephen having lost his parents, there was only so much they could contribute. This left Grace shouldering most of the burden despite her unwavering determination and love for her husband. Seeing the gravity of the situation, Grace decided to speak with the church pastor about the overwhelming cost of Stephen's surgery, which amounted to almost $40,000. She knew it was a significant amount, but she had no other options left. "Pastor," Grace said, her voice trembling with emotion, "the cost of Stephen's surgery is almost $40,000. I don't know how we can pay for it. We've exhausted all our resources." The pastor's face paled slightly at the amount. "Grace, that is indeed a substantial sum, but we cannot lose hope. I will bring this matter to the church board members and see what we can do to help. Please give me a little time to discuss it with them." The pastor met with the board members to discuss Stephen's surgery. Although he personally had reservations about spending such a significant amount of money on Stephen, he kept his concerns to himself. After presenting Stephen's case to the board, Moses, who was a substantial contributor to the church and harbored a grudge against Grace for not accepting his proposal, stood up to voice his opinion. He saw this as an opportunity to assert his feelings about Grace's decision. Moses began, his tone measured but firm. "While we all empathize with Stephen's situation, we must consider the broader implications of using such a large sum of money from our church funds. If we start spending on individual health issues, we risk opening the floodgates. Many will bring their personal medical problems to the church, which could drain our resources and hinder our church's development." His words caused a stir among the members. Some nodded in agreement, while others looked troubled. The debate intensified, with some board members expressing their concern for Stephen and Grace's plight, emphasizing the importance of supporting a dedicated church member in need. They argued that the church should be a place of refuge and support, especially in times of crisis. Others, however, echoed Moses' sentiments, pointing out the potential for future financial strain and the need to maintain a balanced approach to church funds. They feared setting a precedent that could lead to unsustainable demands on church resources. Supporting the need to help a valued member of their assembly, while others echoed Moses' concerns about the precedent it would set. After much discussion, the pastor decided to hold a secret vote to resolve the issue. The members cast their votes, and the result was against providing financial support for Stephen's surgery. The decision left Grace and Stephen without the needed funds from the church. The pastor approached Grace with a heavy heart. "Grace, I am deeply sorry to inform you that the board has decided not to allocate the church's funds for Stephen's surgery. We understand the gravity of the situation, but the decision was made to protect the church's future. Grace's heart sank. She had hoped the church, which had been their pillar of support, would stand by them in this dire time. This story is about to be taken to the next level. If you want to know the end of this amazing story, leave a comment saying it continue, and I will see you in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please do so. Like and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss out on any of our amazing stories. Bye bye.